Okay, welcome back to the Jiu Jitsu Mindset. My name is Pete Deeley, and I sadly am here by myself without my partner in crime, Professor Lucas Hubo. He is away doing the good work of being a new parent. So I'm going to do my best to be solo. I've been talking to him. Things are great with both his wife and his new boy. But like all new parents, he's tired. So he told me he is grateful for submission coffee. So for those of you who might be a little in need of caffeine, please go to the jujitsumindset.com and get your own bag of coffee. In the world, we meet incredible people and incredible people for a variety of different reasons. Some people go in one direction and they're just so exceptional at one given thing, they become great in that area. And then there are other people who just seem to have such an abundance of talents and skills that they become amazing in various different ways. Um, Today, we're so fortunate to talk to somebody who's one of those people, who's been amazing in a variety of things. And I consider it a privilege that he's spending time with us. So, Professor Marcus Kowal, thank you for agreeing to have the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's so many places that we could start, so many stories we could unwind. But when I look at your life, what I'm curious about is that you're a person that seems to have extraordinary energy, extraordinary curiosity, and you know, willing to try and do different things, and then commit yourself to these different things. So, if in your life you didn't have the martial arts to pour that energy and passion and focus into, I'm curious how things would be different for you. Like what direction would your life taken had you not had that vehicle?
That's a great question, and thank you, by the way. And I do for Professor Lucas. I feel his pain, but love excitement as well. I have a 3-month-old who's been up with all night here. But that's a great question because I chose martial arts and fighting. And if you look, I have two loving parents that are together, and a lot of times when you look at fighting, there's some type of violence or difficulties growing up, and I truly didn't have that. Um, but I'm somewhat of an adrenaline junkie, and I needed an outlet for a lot of energy. I'm a little older, so I don't know. Perhaps that there's some, letter, some acronym that I have, but I needed this outlet, and I played sports my whole life, but I really, really enjoyed fighting.
Okay.
Uh, and I'm from Sweden originally, but I lived in England for many years, and British people like to fight. I went to school in a very rough area, one of the roughest area. I just looked it up actually a few weeks ago, and it's still considered the most the highest amounts of crimes in that area. So I wasn't going in the right direction, perhaps. And for me, it's hard to. I started doing martial arts at 15, so it's hard to even thinking of a life without martial arts. But I do know I wouldn't have been as happy because
Mhm.
I do know that it's one of my main outlets for stress today. And truthfully, I don't know if I would have done very well in life.
Yeah.
So that's it's a great question, and I never really thought about it.
In this progression of your life, when I look at your choices, what I perceive is that in whatever chaos that goes along with a neighborhood like that, and that sometimes the external forces are too strong for a person to make their choices from an internal locus of control. They're reacting against the chaos of the neighborhood, and then always within those contexts are those people who, regardless of what's going on around them, can make choices. So as I kind of look at the progression of, you from a teenager into a young man, that you seem to take a beat and go to university as a choice. And in that environment, that might not have been what all your peers were doing. So I'm curious, like where you found that quietness to go, okay, I'm going to pick where I want to go rather than react to all of these different stimuli around me.
That one I can't take any credit for. That was all my dad.
Okay.
I don't think I would have gone to university if it wasn't for him and a lot of you bring me back down memory lane here. But a lot of long conversations. Didn't want to do it. He said just get into a university and then you can figure out from there. Um, and so I was back in Sweden at the time. I went to university, and the truth is, I didn't even know where I was going and what I was going to study because I didn't really. I was sitting with him and picking things like, yeah, sure. Um, and ended up going to the University of Kent in Canterbury, and um, I was there for a year. I left after the first year, and I went back to Sweden. I joined the military. I joined the special forces, the Rangers, and that was definitely more down my path and something I wanted to do. Unfortunately, I had a really bad injury, and I got a knee in the back, which everyone thinks sounds like a cool injury in the special forces, but we were actually playing a non-contact sport, and it was a freak
Just an
accident.
accident. Yeah.
A guy decided he was going to try to jump over me when I went down to cover a shot, and as I stood up, it became like a flying knee that hit next to my spine, and it
Oh
took
my
me
gosh.
a couple of months to get back to walking. I was with a walking table, then with a crutch, and
Oh,
uh, he took me out of there. And education. My dad came to Sweden as an asylum seeker from Poland, so for him, especially coming from the East Bloc back then, like education, get your education. And so, I don't know, maybe I would have done it later, but it was definitely thanks to him. After being in the military, uh, I think that was the beginning part of perhaps calming down a little bit, and I went back and I finished university. I was very close to not even being able to continue into my second year, and it was not because of not understanding the topics. It was more about just not showing up and not being in classes.
sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, and what you're describing to my ears is you probably had a very strong will as a teenager, and but on some level you must have there must have been seeds of humility in your strong will, because I'm sure you loved your dad and your dad loves you, but still that you would accept that guidance. And the military has a tendency of overwhelming even the strong will to say, regardless of how strong-willed you are, this system is designed to take, your strong will and blend it into, all of our intentions. And I say that as somebody who's never served in the military, but my observation, particularly among the special forces, is that they need incredibly strong-willed people, but not strong-willed in a way that they can't be in concert with everybody around them. And I'm wondering if, often injuries become where you can't deny the truth of the injury. If you were having to walk with that, also seems to be a thing that tamps down the ego in a sense, because you have no choices. You must submit, much like tapping in
Yeah.
jujitsu. If you are dishonest in jujitsu, it immediately punishes you in my mind, because if the position is lost and you insist that it's not, that's, I feel like, where the most injuries occur. Um, so
That's a very good point regarding the injury. It was very humbling
yeah,
going from being, a top level athlete um, from one day to the next day, not being able to walk, having
yeah,
to use one of those like claw things to pick things up. I couldn't
yeah,
even pick things up and that made me very angry.
I bet.
And like you said, where you see sometimes someone coming in with an ego and getting submitted, and it was hard for me for a while to accept it. Luckily, I made almost a full recovery. Had some, I have some nerve damage at the back, but it doesn't matter. I have a piece of my back where I have no sensation, but I don't need it, so it's okay. Um, but yeah, you're 100% right. And again, if you ask my dad, I don't know if he would agree with you on the humility part, but definitely a strong will and very very stubborn. The type of person, unfortunately, at times only can learn from my own mistakes.
Sure.
Um, but I am 100% sure that over time and maturing and so on, that has improved. I hope. I have to ask my wife, but at the same time, that is because of martial arts, because you fail and you get humbled and you
Yeah.
get um every day you realize there's people that are better than you there, but it's okay. And it's okay to make mistakes, right? So
Yeah, and for like around the similar age, I mean, I blew out an ACL when I'd been a college soccer player, and then I did that, and it was for me an experience that demonstrated to me that my body was not indestructible. I think I had a sense of uh, I could physically do anything in the world that I felt like I needed to do, and if I couldn't do it at the moment, I had just 100% confidence that I could train myself into it. And then I encountered something that, uh, lots of people recover from ACLs, but for me, it was a very meaningful kind of change. And then age just restricts my body in a way that I have to acknowledge. I just don't move the same at 54 that I did at 44, 34, 24. It just is a different tool. Um,
yeah.
and I try to be graceful about it, although I sometimes don't. As you complete the education, though, as you submit to the discipline of getting a degree, you also seem to be choosing a route of physicality in that. And by the way, I love the fact that you're in England and you're in Sweden. As I understand it, as you make this decision to become a fighter, you move to Mexico. Is
Yeah.
which is great imagination in my mind. I mean, not everybody thinks, oh, I have the whole world to consider as where I should be living and training and all the rest of it. So I admire your ability to make that move. Could you talk just a bit about like what coalesces around, okay, I was a special forces military person, then I was a student, completed that, but now I want to go fight.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I was kickboxing at the time. I come from striking, and I wanted to be a fighter. I wanted to turn pro, and I wanted to improve my hands. And I thought, who's got the best boxing in the world at my
Mm,
weight class? It
nice.
was either Cuba or Mexico. Um, it was a lot easier to get a visa to Mexico, and so I went to Mexico without speaking a word of Spanish, and lived there for 2 years. I speak fluent Spanish now, and because I lived, and especially boxing and kickboxing, very few of them spoke any English, so I had no choice. Best way to learn a language is through social pressure. So,
Yeah.
um, and even moving from Sweden to England was a big change, right? And especially we didn't live in a bad area, but I went to school in a bad area. But compared to Mexico, there was a level of poverty that I'd never seen, seeing children at streetlights begging,
Right.
that was to me very, very humbling, very,
Yes.
because you see, and it's always sad, especially living in California now, where there's a ton of homeless people. Um, and of course, mental health is the biggest issue, but as an adult without mental health issues, you have had a chance to make choices. As a child, you never do.
Right.
And so to see some of these children and they got treated like rats at times, and that's hard. And to see values in life was something that I really learned. There were some of the guys from my boxing team, they were very, very poor, where no electricity, no running water. Um, and I would go visit, and they would offer what they had, and I didn't want to have anything from them because I know they were struggling as it was, but again, family values, resilience.
Yeah.
So we know it from watching Mexican fighters, right? Some of them the toughest, most resilient people that we'll find. So
Right.
uh, I'm very, very fortunate and very grateful for having a chance to live in Mexico, and I love the culture. I love the people from there.
So when you go down and you train and then you bring to fruition what was in your imagination that you wanted to be a professional fighter, what did that feel like? One of the timelines that I don't know is when jujitsu enters into your consciousness, because I think it's after you actually become a professional fighter, but I may have that wrong. So
Oh,
maybe you could
you're
tie those things together.
well. It was funny because I watched this. I was living in Sweden. I was 15, I think, when the first UFC came out.
Okay.
And a friend of mine had gotten an illegal copy of it. So I watched the first, it was maybe 6 months after the first UFC actually happened.
Right.
And I watched it and I thought, I want to punch. I want to punch and kick. Like that's cool.
Mm.
Um, but it's a magazine called Fighter in Sweden, and Rickson Gracie was on the cover of it.
Wow.
I'm very grateful. It was always when I was young, imagine getting to be on the cover of that magazine, and I was on the cover, and to be on this cover for the sake of a magazine where Rickson Gracie
Yeah.
was huge. And you're right. I moved to, um, I was supposed to join the US military. My social is a military social,
Okay.
really long story, but I was going to join the Rangers over here. And I was looking forward to it. It was, around the time of 9/11. I moved here 2002. I would have been happy at the time to go down to Afghanistan and fight. And today I'm glad that I didn't, because we have a lot of vets. I'm very, very fortunate to never have to have had experience in combat as a soldier. And at the time, it was, something that was romanticized in my head. I wanted to do it. And I'm very happy and very glad that I haven't had to do that. But I came to Los Angeles. I was fighting out of the original LA boxing where Shane Mosley came from. And there was a gentleman called Vander Braga, a very famous Brazilian jiu-jitsu player who was teaching there, and he was fighting MMA as well. He was with the UFC, and he was fighting the late Joe Camacho. And he asked me, "Hey, can you work striking with me, and I'll teach you jiu-jitsu?" And I said, I'll teach you some striking, but you don't have to teach me that jiu-jitsu stuff. I'm not that interested in it. And then one day when we had trained, he said, let's just mess around a little bit. And he choked me out without using his hands, just using the triangle choke. And I thought, if I can learn that, I'll strike with anyone. So, and at the time, 135 pounds didn't exist. So the lightest weight was 155. So I started training, and then Vander trained with Rickson, and Rickson Gracie was very close to me. So I started training with Rickson Gracie.
Oh my gosh.
Very starstruck, and being able to meet him and train. And so, and what's amazing with Rickson is not just, how good he was himself, but how detailed and how good of a coach. Sometimes the best fighters don't make the best coaches.
Yes.
But he did. And Henry Akins, who was under him, who I also got an opportunity to train with, and very, very grateful. That was the beginning of jiu-jitsu for me. And quite truthfully, it took me a couple of years to start enjoying jiu-jitsu, but I didn't go about it the right way. I did it because I had to learn it, because I wanted to fight. But I didn't want to learn technique. I just wanted to fight. So I would just roll, and I would get choked out. I'm pretty good at defending chokes. And the only reason why is because I got choked out for years. And then that led me to mixed martial arts. And, I think I've one of the longest reigning purple belts. I was a purple belt for over 10 years. And I'm working on getting my black belt in 2025. And my jiu-jitsu is very special because, again, I've been training it for over 20 years now. But I have very MMA-like jiu-jitsu. So parts of my game, like defending submissions, no gi, I'm a black belt. Holding positions, I'm probably a black belt. In gi, and I've you'll talk about that in a little bit, but I've fallen in love with gi. For the longest time, I didn't enjoy it at all. But like opening guard in gi, I'm maybe a 2-stripe blue belt. Why? Because I used to open guards by punching. I didn't punch someone's guard, right? It wasn't truly until I ended my professional career that I really fell in love with gi. Because I do Krav Maga as well, and I'm a black belt in Krav Maga, and understanding how important the gi is for self-defense as well. But I love playing chess, and gi jiu-jitsu truly is. They say boxing is human chess. Jiu-jitsu is human chess.
Yeah, I'm a chess player as well, and that analogy. In fact, one of my favorite training partners had been a champion youth chess player, and when he's always choking me out or making me tap, I can tell his mind has that very sequential, logical, how to make connections. He makes connections intellectually, and he's able to translate that physically, and that mind-body connection is, I think, one of the things that is boundary. When you start to feel your mind and your body connected is when jiu-jitsu starts to be much more enjoyable. That's one of our founding reasons for the podcast, is that we feel like people quit too early. You know, that too many people, get their blue belt and they're like, okay, that's enough. Where we feel like, oh, obviously it's an endless journey, but that you don't really get a chance to experience the real pleasure of it until it down the road. It's just, for me, it takes one of the things that takes a very long time. Um,
Yes.
so does jujitsu inform your fights in MMA fights, or is it more a part of your, just your overall development of a martial artist? But how do those two things interplay? Because I don't know, I don't remember quite like how many fights you had.
So it's funny because I came into MMA late in my fight career. I was almost, I was at the end of my career. So
Right.
MMA, I only did 8, and there was no amateur,
Yeah.
California. And I remember my first MMA fight, I total amount of fights. I have some 56, 57 fights between boxing, Golden Gloves boxing, title boxing, world championships, and then kickboxing as well. But MMA, so by the time I made my debut in MMA, every time a fight would start, it was almost like autopilot, right? But I remember my first MMA fight, and the ref said fight, and I'm like, what am I gonna do now? And so I fought until 2018, uh, I had a lot of injuries. And what's important to remember is when I started fighting, there was no internet, there was no
Right.
YouTube, there was
Yeah.
no Instagram to watch techniques. So what we did is we didn't diet right, we didn't cut weight right, we didn't train right. I was very overtrained. I was, like you said before, I was young. I thought I was completely invincible. My body can take anything. And if you look at a lot of ex-fighters, a lot of times they gain weight. And I
Mhm.
understand why now, because you have so many injuries. And it makes sense. You're using your body to try to hurt someone else's body
Right.
as much as you can. Of course, you're going to get injuries. And so when I ended my career, um, I had my last fight. I was supposed to do my last fight here in LA. And I
Mhm.
said to my wife, even if I get a call, don't let me fight again.
Mhm.
2 weeks later, I got a call back to Sweden and be the main event for Bulldog Fight Night, which is one of the big organizations in Sweden. When I left Sweden, MMA was illegal.
Okay.
So one of the pioneers, I was the first Swede to fight for Strikeforce. And so to be able to complete that circle of fighting in my home city. So I said, all right, let's do it. So I went back home and fought. But after I ended my career is when I truly realized how beat up my body was.
Yeah.
Neck injuries. I had no sensation going down to my thumb. I was going to have a neck surgery, same surgery that Alan Jabbar from the UFC and Christos Giagos had. I actually got their doctor's number. But that started the journey that I've been on now. I had a full hip replacement a year and a half ago. The amount of broken pieces of the body and tightnesses and so on. One of the simplest things after my fight career, I thought, all right, I'm going to learn how to do a handstand. I always wanted to be able to do a handstand. Should probably take me 3 to 4 months. I'm 3, 4 years into actually really working on it. I'm just learning because my shoulders were so tight from being in the fight stance for so
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So that's when and so my fighting, especially in the beginning, was all striking. But I won my last 2 fights by
Okay.
submission.
There we
Um,
go.
and both of them, I didn't try to. I wanted to strike. I wanted a highlight
Yeah.
knockout, for the last fight, but ended up being a submission. So, it's amazing with jiu-jitsu how you can go into a fight and you could potentially, in the last, the one in Sweden, I ended up winning without being punched once.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I know that there's all these offshoots that we could go down that are all extraordinary by themselves. I mean, being a Golden Globe, boxer that's an extraordinary achievement as someone that went down to Mexico. I mean, boxing was, I think, was new, right? You had been a Muay Thai fighter, and just stand up, Marcus at Queensberry boxing. It seems like it was, it was new. And I know that in England, I think you created the first club, right, for Muay Thai boxing in your university there.
The
It's
first kickboxing club, yes,
first kick.
and I'm from Sweden. Holland is close by, so it's kickboxing, uh, and it's interesting. Even when I was living in Mexico, kickboxing was very big. So I would fight. I lived there for 2 years. I think I had 12 fights down there, and
Wow.
I would fight boxing one week, and I fight kickboxing the next
Wow.
week. When I moved to LA, some of my, the people that I looked up to the most, Don the Dragon Wilson, Benny the Jet Orquídez, they were in LA. So I thought, whoa, kickboxing, the mecca of kickboxing. But kickboxing was almost dead when I came to LA.
Mm.
And that's when Muay Thai was really coming onto the scene. And it was too different for me. Boxing, kickboxing was a little bit more similar. So
Okay.
I had to pick. So I chose boxing. I was actually going to try to go for um, the Olympics with the Swedish team. So, but I had my jaw dislocated, and instead of stopping sparring, I continued sparring. So I ultimately ended up dislocating it four times, and had really bad TMJ. And that's when I got the chance to start focusing on a little bit on jiu-jitsu. So uh, the 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 kickboxing club that started at the university, there was no kickboxing club, and I didn't want to at first. And the athletic commissioner, the athletic commissioner, the
Mhm.
athletic director of the university,
Right.
asked me to start it. And I said, I don't want to. I want to just focus on my own fight career. He said, you can get funding. I'm like, wait, so I can travel and compete? Yeah, great, sure. And I talk about this a lot because when we have our new instructors that develop, I thought it was going to be like 10 people showing up for our first meeting. And it was over 120 people
Wow.
that came to the meeting. And when I was standing in front and talking to them, I started shaking and I was stuttering. And I'm like, what's happening? And I didn't realize what I had was stage fright. I was
Sure. Yeah.
uncomfortable speaking in front of these people. And it's still today the biggest university club after the University of Kent.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah.
And I'm very happy to have started because it's such an amazing sport as well. And then the equivalent of the NCAA in Britain is the BUSA, British University Sports Association.
Right.
So I thought let's have the nationals, um, and they didn't have it as an official sport. So I called around to all the universities that had kickboxing clubs, and we organized the first kickboxing nationals.
Amazing.
And we organized it. I won it. Some of my guys on my team won it as well in their weight classes. And it's today actually a BUSA recognized sport, and they have nationals. So, to me, martial arts is about continuing to grow, right? And
Right.
learning different things. And I'm very happy to be able to combine it, the striking with the grappling.
So, as these are all like extraordinary achievements, and they're big stories in and of themselves. And I think I'd like to turn just now to as you're become a very successful entrepreneur, and you're a writer as well. And I know that you're organizing an event coming up here that's sort of connected to a nonprofit. Um, could you tell me a little bit about how all of these disciplines that you adopted as a person impacted your life? Yeah, we can talk about the nature of your book as much as you want to or not want to. I know, not to delve into something that you don't want to address here if you don't want to, but if you could kind of
I'm very
talk a little bit about, yeah, I mean, the discipline to keep yourself whole in the face of tragedy is difficult, and not everybody can do it. Sometimes tragic things push people off in a way that it overwhelms them, and their choices become, a vicious circle. And then there are other people that can translate that tragedy into being connected to others who have been in tragic situations. So, if you're willing to, maybe you could talk a little bit about the event, your book, those types of things as well.
Um, I I lost my firstborn son, Liam, on September 3rd, 2016. And I at the time we were a pure fight gym. We had the first fight to go to the UFC from here. We had several fighters go there, and I loved my life. Becoming a father was life changing, and I loved every moment of it. And one of the things as a martial artist is that, and we talk about this a lot in martial arts in general, is being able to defend our children. And if someone would have told me a 72-year-old woman was going to take my son's life, I would have thought it was a joke, but that's unfortunately what happened. My son was 15 months old when my sister-in-law was going to pick up food, did everything right. She was crossing the street. She was waiting for the lights when a car blew through the crossing and hit both her and my son. She survived, and then she had a broken leg and she was unconscious for a while, but my son ended up not making it. And I learned no, there's been no bigger um, life lesson and many lessons from it than I have never dealt with mental health issues my whole life. Working with clients, you hear people talking about depression and so on, and I could feel sorry for them and sympathize with them, but I couldn't relate because I'd never dealt with it. And from one day to the next, when your world literally is in shambles, and
Yes.
what was more important than your own life is gone, how do you find your way back? And I I I do believe that martial arts was very, very helpful for me in that. It took and for the rest of my life, I will
Yes.
live
Right.
with that scar on
Yes.
my. It doesn't go away.
Oh,
Every day
right.
is it's some days are harder than others, but there's uh obviously the part of the day when it happened. But for me, while we were still in the hospital, and then one of the things I learned is usually we know that people die when their heart stops. I learned that you can also be declared dead through
Yes.
your brain dead, and it's not the same thing as being in a coma. And it's uh, we were in there first. It looked like he was going to be okay. He had a heartbeat and a pulse, and then all of a sudden they changed. They took him to a different floor, and to declare someone brain dead, first they have to do a test.
Yes.
Then we have to wait for 12 hours, and then two doctors have to be present to do this. And those 12 hours and being there, even though on some level I knew that he was gone,
Yes.
but to to have it said, and then because it looked like he was asleep
Right.
at the moment when we had to walk out of there,
Yes.
uh,
I,
you
I'm,
know,
s- I'm sorry. Yes.
it's okay. It's okay. And that's one of the things that I've learned is, you know, that I speak a lot. I speak to a lot of high school students, both about not drinking and driving, but also on grief, because it's something that we will all experience.
Yes.
And we don't get taught how to handle it. And especially men, a lot of times,
Right.
get taught growing up that, you know, emotions is a sign of weakness, which is not at
Yes.
all the case. So the stigma of being a fighter, being macho, if I can speak openly about it, I speak about it in the book as well. And I think it's very, very important. And that's why I'm both able and I speak about Liam daily. And,
Yes.
and
Yes.
uh, while we were still in the hospital, I said, um, we're going to do something. We're going to do something to make sure that his legacy lives on.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided to fight drunk driving, because I didn't know how big of a problem drunk driving truly is in the United States. I didn't
Sure.
know that 10,000 lives are lost every single year. That's the
Yeah.
equivalent of a jumbo jet crashing every single week.
Right.
I didn't know. And I'd noticed, coming from Sweden where, again, I was no angel growing up, but with just drinking and driving was something that we didn't do. It was not just because of the law, where the legal BAC is zero point zero 0.02 in the United States is zero point zero 0.08, but it was just the social stigma of doing it. Like you just didn't do it. And
Right.
and for me, this was going to be an easy fight, and that's when I learned about American politics. I
Yes.
said, more than 100 countries have lowered it from zero point zero 0.08 to zero point zero 0.05 or lower. Um, we know scientifically, we see the statistics. This would be an easy change. And then I got into politics, to activism, to change this. We had the law, the bill introduced in California, known as Liam's Law, in 2018, and it was killed. And it's not because it doesn't make sense. It's because people are concerned that they're going to lose money.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and it's disgusting and it's completely unacceptable. You know, I've lived there for a long time now. And I would say the United States of America is more polarized than it's ever been. And, you know, you see one side or both sides screaming at each other. And in the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's president. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. Until lobbyism gets regulated, it won't make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's something that's ultimately the long-term fight. But at the same time, that's why we decided to do this jiu-jitsu tournament for the foundation, for Liam's Life Foundation, because martial artists are doers. One of my
Yes.
frustrations has been like to get people to contact your local politician. Pressing like and share is good, but it's not enough. And so the problem is, you know, with people being physically and mentally more unhealthy in the United States than ever before, people are not willing to do it. If you can't take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of others?
Right.
And that was frustrating for me because for us, it's too late. We've lost our son. I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for everyone. Of course, for Liam's younger siblings, Nico and Luna and Milo, who was just born. But, and we can do this. And that's when we decided to do this jiu-jitsu tournament. The slogan for it is roll with a purpose, fight for a cause. And this is bigger than just jiu-jitsu. But at the same time, martial arts is the most unifying thing. I can't think, and of course we're biased, this is what we do, but I can't think of another place where every race, every religion, every political affiliation, and even cops and ex-cons can train together.
Right.
So that's, and with our goal is to change it to 0.05 on the federal level. And I've been told many times, you're up against giants, this is a fight you will never win. And my answer is, watch me. It's going to be 0.05 on the national level. I know this is going to take time, but in 2025, the 0.05 bill is going to be reintroduced or introduced for the first time in 8 states in the United States. And we have it now in Utah as the only state, the first state in the US, which is 0.05.
That's interesting. Well, there's so many things you just said, and let me, and as it relates to Liam in particular, very few people will know what you just said, but I'm one of them in that we had a suicide in our family of a teenage boy, and we had that same dynamic. And one of the things that was impossibly brutal, beyond my ability to describe to you how brutal it was, is that we had to walk him down from his room to the operating room because his body was alive, but his brain had died. And then his body, then we gave to allow people who needed eyeballs, his body was given so other people could have the organs that they needed. But it's an unusual level of grief to say goodbye in that manner. So just out of respect for how profound that was, I wanted to acknowledge it, because the energy that comes out of that creates now the chance to reduce the number of times other people would have to go through something similar. If we reduce the blood alcohol level to 0.5, if those 10,000 drops in any way, if you're touched by that, it's a life-changing touch, right? You don't have that experience of someone getting hit by a drunk driver. You would do anything for that. So when you talk about doers, you're doing it for everybody, yourself, your family, me, everybody listening, that everybody benefits from it. It'll be an interesting political realignment in the next, 10 years, because as self-driving cars become a bigger economic force, it'll be interesting to see if the alignments change, because clearly the economic interests that are protected by keeping a 0.8, those interests are no longer threatened, because now there's you can call a Waymo and we can get people out of cars. Maybe there'll be some headwinds for you, or not headwinds, but tailwinds.
There's been plenty of headwinds along the way. That's for sure.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
And especially with this, and we know the numbers. We know that from more than 100 countries, we know that lowering it from 0.08 to 0.05 will
Yes.
save 20% of the lives taken. That's over 2,000 lives on an
Yes.
annual basis. That's not including people with brain damage that end up in a wheelchair.
Yes.
66% of the US population will at some point be affected by drunk driving. And we also speak, like you said, I speak very much on organ donation. We donated Liam's organs so that others can live as well.
Yes.
You know, you couldn't fill Yankee Stadium with the amount of people that are waiting for an organ.
Yes.
And you're right, Waymo, self-driving cars, it's the ultimate solution to both drunk driving, distracted driving, drowsy driving, and so on. Waymo is actually the title sponsor for Liam's foundation, and they come
Perfect.
from Phoenix, right? Arizona,
Yeah.
where you
Yes.
are.
Yeah.
I love them because they are really supporting us on our mission. What's frustrating as well is that, you know, point oh 0.08, and for anyone in the nightclub industry, in the restaurant association industry, or restaurant associations,
Right.
it's the fear mongering from dark lobbyists, because there are meta studies showing that if you are not driving, you're willing to stay out longer and drink more. And if
Right.
you look at
Yes.
countries with much stronger drinking cultures than the US, Italy, Spain, Holland, Germany, Sweden, you know, where 0.08 was lowered over 20 years ago, we see the amount of deaths per capita is not even a third of the United. No other country in the world, by the way, per capita has a high amount of deaths due to drunk driving than the United States.
Wow.
So we see the numbers, but alcohol consumption has continued to go up. So it's not going to affect what they're
Yeah.
concerned with, which is their bottom line, right?
Right.
So it's a frustrating fight. It has to definitely taught me patience. But I'm at the same time, compared to many of these politicians, I'm willing to have this debate with anyone, anywhere, anytime. I've noticed with a lot of the good people that are fighting this cause, they're not always as outspoken. At times I can be very much in people's faces. I'm using social media to call people out because, and I had a call with, you know, I don't have to say his name, but I can say the president of the AAA in Southern California, when I called out AAA for not supporting us. And he
Right.
called me and said, "Hey, can we keep this conversation off social media?" And I said, I'm happy to, if you're willing to support us. I am not here to make friends. I'm here to make a difference.
Right. Yeah. Well, your life has trained you for big fights, and this one is going to be maybe the most impactful of them all. Well, could we get some details around that January 12th? Roll for a cause. Was it roll for a
Roll with the
purpose, fight for a
purpose,
cause?
help reports.
Okay,
Yes.
very good.
It's on January 12th in El Segundo,
Okay.
very close to Phoenix in Southern California at Da Vinci High School. It's our first inaugural. This is something that we're looking to do. And for those interested in the bigger picture, this is something that we can then scale, because
Yes.
there's jiu-jitsu all over the country. Once we go into fight for Arizona, for example, we can
Right.
do a Liam's Life Open in Arizona as well. And for us, it's a way to both raise funds, obviously, for the nonprofit, but also to educate.
Right.
Just to have the bill introduced, and the bill was killed, and we knew there was a good chance it would get killed, but it starts a conversation.
Yes.
Because I work a lot with law enforcement. I do a lot of defensive tactics for the LA Sheriff's Department,
Mhm.
many police departments, and I always ask. At the end, I asked them, you know, I talked to them about Liam's Life Foundation. I asked them, what's the legal BAC in the United States? And every officer knows it, of course. But my follow-up question is, how many drinks is that?
Mhm.
And most people have no idea that 0.08 is 45 drinks on an empty stomach for an average male of 170 pounds. At 0.08, you're drunk.
Mhm.
And we know scientifically what each 0.01 of BAC does to our reaction time, to our
Right.
decision making. That has nothing to do with country, culture, religion, race, anything else. We are all the same, right? So it's both to educate, but even when Waymos and all cars automatic, for me, it's more than just that you can't, the legal part, that it's the other side of it as well. It's your social responsibility.
Yes. Right.
And
Right.
and freedom in America, you know, it's a very important word, and of course we're very lucky to live in and to be born into free democratic countries. But it's also really important to understand that your freedom is free. You can drink as much as you want, but as soon as your decision affects someone else, it's no longer your decision to make. And so that's something that's really important to teach. And I have to say, the younger generation are easier to teach because they don't drink as much. They're already used to Uber and Lyft and so on.
Yes.
It's the old generation. I've even had people tell me, I drive better when I've been drinking.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so I'm old enough to when, I know you've lived in countries where maybe there is no drinking age, but where the drinking age was 18. I'm at the age where they started to flip it to 21, but I'm also old enough to remember commercials where drinking and driving laws started to come into the public consciousness. And I can recall news segments where people saying, you're telling me I can't have a beer in the car on the way home? That's un-American. And so when you talk about the older group being the harder to convince and to get into this conversation, it's a deep history of overcoming. Hey, what do you mean you're infringing on my rights by not being able to have beer in the car? In the 80s, it looks back now, it looks so antiquated that how could someone think like that? But it doesn't surprise me when you tell me that story. Tell us, is there going to be people who are going to want to find you and follow you and understand like how to be a part of what you're talking about? Give us the social media places and wherever else you might want them to look.
Yeah, thank you. So the anyone who does jiu-jitsu, the way we wanted this to be, so this is not the IBJJF World Championships. This is a great beginners tournament because it's not just about, yeah, sure, come, there's going to be some great prizes. Simple Human is sponsoring this. Waymo is sponsoring this.
Wow.
Code Barbells is sponsoring it. We got some amazing sponsors. So very nice prizes, but it's like it's not the 100-meter finals of the Olympics, is a 5K. That's the way we look at it. So for everyone, it's going to be very beginner friendly. If you go to liamslife.org, then you can find your way to the tournament on there, and also the fight. Sign up on there. So when this fight comes to your state or wherever you are, you can learn how we will make this happen. On Smooth Comp, Liam's Life Open BJJ tournament is on there as well. And for on social media, remember Liam is the ads. And myself, it's Mac Kowal, MACKOWAL. And we also have the Gym Systems Training Center here in Los Angeles. Anyone in town, anyone that comes to visit LA, come on by. We're very welcoming, open gym. Always enjoy having people in. And we have it all. We have jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, and Krav Maga, boxing, MMA.
Yeah.
So
that's perfect. Well, listen, you're a person, this podcast would be about 7 days long if I asked you all the questions that I would like to ask you. So that's a good place for us to kind of mark this. And thank you for, sharing all the different things that you did. Thank you for the work you're doing to change things for the better for us. I mean, grateful. Perhaps there's a way that we could work to bring something to the Phoenix area and have a similar event down here. And
love to.
When I'm out in Los Angeles, I'm coming to see you. So we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.